Let's see where we go here. Okay. Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. You're here with me. It's Sunday night on a nice, warm, beginning of fall kind of weather here in Summerville, South Carolina. I trust all is well with you wherever you are. We've got a lot of stuff happening in the international realm. Did you hear the Chinese scientist on TV, online, wherever she might have been, who alleges that the coronavirus spreading around the world was actually man-made? We've heard that before. But she was on with Tucker Carlson this week, Fox News. Her name is Li-Meng Yan. And she stepped forward to allege that the coronavirus was lab manufactured as a disease. It did not come from nature. This is a very brave woman. She also said that the wet market story was a smokescreen aimed to pivot attention away from the virus's apparent release. Now, wet markets are places in China where they sell fresh meat and fish, often still alive, as opposed to dry markets that have only durable goods, clothing, electronics, that sort of thing. Dr. Yan said that this virus was China's Frankenstein monster. Carlson asked about China's motive in creating this virus, and Dr. Yan said you'd have to ask the Chinese Communist Party. They're the ones that released it. In April, sources told Fox News that this whole thing was part of China's effort to demonstrate that its efforts to identify and combat viruses are equal to or greater than the capabilities of the United States, that it did not start out to be a weapon. But it ended up that way, didn't it? President Donald Trump hosted Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, United Arab Emirates Foreign Minister Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and Bahrain's Foreign Minister Abdulatif bin Rashid Al Zayani. Practiced at the White House last Tuesday. They were there to sign something called the Abraham Accords, and in so doing, they ushered in official normalization between those three countries. And as a result, the world is going crazy. The goal is to normalize relationships, establish embassies, exchange ambassadors, work together as partners. What's the problem? President Trump indicated at least 6 other countries that are working toward this same goal. All of this solidifies both the United States' influence in the region and undermines that of our enemies. That's what they're upset about. The Bible talks about the Great Tribulation and an army from the north that comes down and invades Israel. It also talks about an army from the south that moves up to push that army out. Could be they want to take over the land too, but the goal is to come ostensibly to Israel's aid. This is the beginning. All these Arab countries who are making peace with Israel. No, not Iran, not Iraq, not Turkey. There's a couple others in there. We'll see how it works. Appearing on the Today Show this past Monday, Woodward and Burns shared audio from a January 22nd conversation he had with President Trump, where the president boasted about his relationship with Turkey's leader. He says, I get along very well with Erdogan, even though you're not supposed to, because everyone says, what a horrible guy. But for me, it works out good. I can tell you that the relationships I have, the tougher and meaner they are, the better I get along with them. Now, you'll explain that to me someday, okay? But maybe it's not a bad thing. The easy ones are the ones I maybe don't like as much or don't get along with as much. Now, Woodward noted the shocking nature of Trump's admitting to aligning himself with leaders such as Turkey's president, while simultaneously having tense relationships with longtime allies. He said he is the face of the United States to the world. And he has said, and there it is, hey, look, I get along with these bad guys, but not the good guys. You need to keep in mind he didn't say that. That's not what he said. He said he gets along with bad guys better than good guys in terms of negotiation. No one is out there defining better. And when it comes to negotiation, who would you rather have? Someone who is new to the game? Someone who was teaching school last year? Or maybe was just working somewhere selling cars? Or maybe they were even in Congress. They were a representative or a senator. Or somebody who has actually dealt with the mafia and the trade unions in New York City for decades, successfully. The left is clamoring for any excuse to find fault with this president, largely because he's not one of them. And it just galls them that he can be so successful without them and despite their efforts to stop him. We haven't heard very much about the Kurds lately. We did back in the day when we were first over there pushing everybody out of Iraq and getting everything straightened out. But today we don't hear a whole lot about them. But I'm here to tell you that you will. Now, the Kurds are a people group. They're not a nation. They want to be a nation. They got kicked out of their nation, but they inhabit 3 different nations. They're an Iranic ethnic group native to the mountainous region of Western Asia known as Kurdistan. Kurdistan spans southeastern Turkey, northwestern Iran, northern Iraq, and northern Syria. Kurdistan has been wiped off the map by these larger nations. Now, the Kurds have lived for centuries on the boundaries of these 4 nations. They are independent people, not willing to be absorbed by any of those nations. We learned of them during our battles with Iraq, and in that battle, they were our friends. They have a significant number of Christians among them, and now they're under assault again. In a video conference last Tuesday, Turkish President Erdogan and Iranian President Rouhani pledged to target Kurdish forces in joint military operations. Both countries agreed that the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, and other affiliated Kurdish groups in the region pose a significant threat to the security of Tehran as well as Ankara. Turkey has been fighting Kurdish rebellion since the early 20th century, long before the 1984 establishment of the PKK, the Kurdish Workers' Party. In the last year, the Ankara Ankara? That's the name of a country. Those folks over in Ankara have significantly increased their foothold in northern Iraq, waging more frequent operations against the Kurdish targets. Last week, the Arab League member states gathered and officially condemned Ankara and Tehran's interference in Arab countries. The Secretary General of the Arab League, Ahmad Abu al-Gheit, emphasized Iran's and Turkey's growing bullying and hostility across the region and stressed the need for a unified Arab front to counter their mounting aggressions. Member states pointed to the Turkish-Iranian joint attacks in northern Iraq, denouncing them as violations of the international laws and sovereignty of states. A similar denouncement was made in late August during a summit between Iraq, Jordan, and Egypt. This highly touted gathering focused on improving ties among the three countries and supporting Baghdad's, Iraq's capital city, newly instated Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi in his mission to limit foreign intervention in his country. This potential new alliance would severely limit Iran's influence in the region, especially if it were to expand to the Gulf and include Saudi Arabia. Our president wants out of that region, out of those problems. We still have troops in Iraq. He doesn't want to get drawn in nor surrounded, and he has drawn some of those troops out. Also, Galia Lindenstrass, a senior research fellow at the Institute for National Security Studies, who specializes in Turkish foreign policy, told the Jewish news service that Erdogan's actions are influenced by the transformation of the international system from a unipolar system to a multipolar one. The perception that the United States is planning to significantly reduce its military presence in the Middle East, which has been announced by our own President Trump just a weekend or so ago, and the power vacuums that have emerged as one of the consequences of the Arab upheavals are all causing, he says, several actors, including Turkey, to act in a more assertive manner. Lindenstrass noted that Turkey's bellicose behavior stems from its perception that in the current international context, acting aggressively doesn't necessarily incur major costs from the global powers. Therefore, the temptation to act this way is greater. And all that's going on, apparently, the European Union is not happy. JewishNewsService.com and the Jerusalem News Service are combining to report that the European Union has warned Serbia and Kosovo that they could undermine their EU membership hopes by moving their Israeli embassies to Jerusalem. The EU doesn't like Israel. There is no EU member state with an embassy in Jerusalem, the European Commission spokesman said. Any diplomatic steps that could call into question the EU's common position on Jerusalem are a matter of serious concern and regret. The message here? Europe hates Israel. Why? Israel threatens Europe. How? Economically? Socially? Politically? No, it's pure anti-Semitism. They're Jews, and that's that. Oh, and they're successful at everything they do, while Europe languishes in all of the above categories. Consider, in the UN, countries such as Venezuela, Libya, China are elected to the UN Human Rights Council. Venezuela, Libya, China, a Human Rights Council? And China chairs the UN's Human Rights Council. They chair the process that nominates the UN's World Monitor on Free Speech. Now keep in mind, there's no such thing as free speech in China, Libya, or Venezuela. They're communists, socialists, meaning they're communist wannabes. It is here at the UN where 85 condemnations of Israel have been issued since 2006. At the same time, only 12 condemnations of North Korea, 9 of Iran, 1 of Venezuela, and none of China. Can you imagine that? None of Qatar, Sudan, nor Somalia. Israel is the only country in the world subject to a permanent item on the United Nations Human Rights Council's annual agenda dedicated to that state's condemnation. This is the world we live in. It's going to get worse. And it'll get worse for Israel before it gets worse for anybody else. Pray for the peace of Israel. I believe that it'll be the pressure applied to Israel that causes the Lord to return.